All right, guys, welcome to Bible Dingers. I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm here with a very special guest, actually, a longtime friend of mine. I think we've known each other for probably close to 10 years or more now. Um, but with that being said, I have Kyle Ewald on the show with us. Kyle, can you say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Kyle, and super excited to be with you, Ryan. You are always super inspirational to me and a lot of other people that we know. But yeah, my name is Kyle. I'm 32. I run a couple of different things. We run a nonprofit called the Forgotten People, where we build churches and feeding centers. They're actually multi-purpose buildings in the mountains of Guatemala. And we have 8 of those, plus a huge life center that's there in the main village. And so my wife and I, along with my baby, try to go out there. I would say probably every other month, depending on how COVID's doing. But we also run to support that. We run a marketing company called Zion Multimedia, where we pretty much do social media for companies all around the United States, and that funds our nonprofit. And so it's kind of a multifaceted, you know, thing going on here.
It's awesome, man. Can you tell me a little bit about how Forgotten People started?
So I was working for a church, and I was the media director for the church when I was in the internship, and they had asked me to go to this country, Guatemala, to film this quick documentary about a guy who had passed away in 2007. This was in 2012 when I went, so it was a few years after. And there's this man named Roscoe who was a missionary, had a 3rd grade education, and that was about it. And he was running this bootleg orphanage in Guatemala. Well, he passed away in 2007. So my goal was to go and film a documentary for our church to help our church raise more money for the mission that had pretty much been left stranded. And so the second time I've been out of the country, I fly out to Guatemala with our youth pastor and a translator, and we fly into the city of Guatemala. Then we take a little bitty plane, fly about 40 minutes into the mountains. Then we get in this truck where you're standing up for cattle, and we drive 3.5 hours up the mountains. And we ended up in these villages where they didn't even speak Spanish at this point. They were just pretty much speaking their native tongue. And so when we were walking up, we had to hike another 3 hours. We're hiking up this mountain. When we're almost there, I hear this lady screaming and crying and saying, you know, glory to God, glory to God. And I'm having my translator translate to us, and she's saying that this lady, when we started arriving, was saying that she didn't want water, she didn't want food, she didn't want a medication. The only thing that she wanted was a church to be built in her village. And then I find out that this lady was 100% blind, and that twice a week, no matter what, rain or shine, she would literally hike 3 times a week back and forth through these mountains just to go to the nearest church, which was 3 hours away, which was 12 hours a week of her just hiking to go, you know, to church. And literally from there, my heart just broke. And I started realizing, like, man, like, here's this blind lady that the only thing that she wants is literally a church to be built in her village. And it broke my heart because, you know, we're from Houston, and there's churches literally of all kinds all around the city. And I'm sitting here saying, like, man, like, if it's, you know, a little bit drizzly outside, like, half the church complains and doesn't even want to come to a church, right? And so just broke my heart. And so we ended up coming back to Houston. You know, I made the video, but God just took a turn, man. Like, we ended up raising money for a church to be built in her village. Literally within 24 hours, it was $8,000. And then, you know, I went back and filmed my own documentary. That was shown at AMC theaters. We got a random connection, and they said, hey, why don't you come play this documentary here where you can fit more people? And so from there, KSBJ got involved, which was the large radio station in Houston, and they invited me to the Chris Tomlin and Carrie Job concert. And then, you know, Christian Brothers Automotive Christian Brothers Automotive, literally the corporation ends up calling me and donating over $300,000. And it was just at this point of like, I was saying, okay, God, like you are definitely doing something. I didn't want to start a nonprofit. A lot of people had always thought like, well, how did you start this nonprofit? Like, is this something that you've always dreamed about? And I'm like, no, like not at all. Like this is something I've never even thought I would ever be interested in. But yeah, it's pretty much how I got started. And from there, we ended up building 7 more churches, which also each building that we build out in the mountains are a church, a school, and a feeding center. So it's a building that plays 3 parts. Yeah, we built this life center in the main village where we can bring a bunch of missionaries to stay, and then go out to the villages. And so, yeah, that's our heart.
So you guys have churches in a bunch of different villages in the mountains?
So we have in the center village, we there's about 19,000 people there. We have what's called our life center, and then if you drive about 3 hours each way from that village, there's other surrounding villages that we have centers as well there. And so our heart is really just to preach the gospel. There's a lot of Catholics that are there. There's a lot of traditions and rituals and witchcraft that is taking over. Guatemala right now is having a surge of Muslims coming into Guatemala, which a lot of people don't even know this. And so my heart is really to saturate the true gospel. I'm not talking about a religious gospel or just wearing something over your head. In Guatemala, a lot of the ladies will wear things over their heads, and really just practicing a lot of traditions and religion. And man, when you just have people really fall in love with just the Holy Spirit, that's our whole goal when we go out there. So
What was that process like to start with, like the actual building? Do you have to like deal with the government, and do you have like a local construction company and all that?
yeah. So when the first church that we built, which was in this lady's house, and not in it, but it was on her property. She actually, what's so funny is everything is just officially unofficial there. So she
Hmm.
wrote on a piece of paper, like this white piece of paper, and just drew a square. She's like, this is my house. She drew this other square and she goes, this is legally your property now, Kyle. I want you to have it. It's like
What?
literally on like school paper. I'm not making it up. And so like I signed the paper, she signed the paper, and it was literally like, it's so funny. But I was like, I don't even want this land, but like, thanks, you know what I mean? Like whatever. And so yeah, and then what we do is we have a very specific process. I would see a lot of missionaries coming over, painting walls and building churches and building water wells and all this stuff, which I'm not against this. But what I had this missionary that told me once, he goes, man, Kyle, this church right here, we've literally painted that wall 8 times this year alone.
Hmm.
And what I started realizing when I was doing mission trips was a lot of us can get in the habit of spending a lot of time serving the people, which is a great thing, but spending absolutely no time with the people themselves. And so when we do any kind of building projects, we always hire locals there, because a lot of the men, for instance, in our village will go to the coast and do sugar cane and work in those fields, and then they end up cheating on their wives and the families become split. And so as much money that you could keep into the actual city itself is the best. And so we actually encourage and we find local people there in the community to actually build these churches. And so yeah, they truck in a bunch of bricks. Bro, it's crazy. Like now there's the government has actually put in a road to every one of our churches. So that was a deal that I made with the mayor is, hey, I'll build the church, but you're going to build a road to these churches. And so he did, which was a game changer. But before that, there's churches that are 3.5, 4 hours away from these communities, and you'll literally have 10-year-old boys that will have like 4 bricks tied to their back, and they're hiking up these mountains 3 hours to get bricks up to this church. And then literally they'll turn right back around, hike all the way back down, pick up 4 more. And that's the process they did to build an entire church. So whenever we take churches out, missionary trips out to these churches that we've built, bro, it's like, when I look at the building, bro, I get so overwhelmed because I'm like, dude, I know exactly what like this whole process was, So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the painting the wall over and over again thing, because I think
Yeah.
you told me that story before. And I remember when I was like 17 or 18 in youth group still, I read this book that was recommended to me by our youth pastor at the time called Revolution in World Missions
Yeah.
by, I think, a guy named KP Yohanan. And
Hmm.
basically, it was about how so often Westerners will just go spend a week somewhere and paint a wall and then come back, not really do a whole lot to spread the gospel or anything like that. And then I've also heard the other side where that's not necessarily true, and that's not the heart behind short-term missionaries, that they go to spread the gospel, to love on people, they're fulfilling the Great Commission. So what are your thoughts on like short-term versus long-term missions trips, and how should people approach that?
So I think the number one thing is there's not just one answer that is for all, because in Guatemala right now, that is not our heart. Our heart is not to send people there to build a house, for instance, and pat ourselves on the back and leave. Our
Mm,
heart is fully to build relationships with the people. And so what we do, we go to Guatemala, is we do Tough Mudders with all the young adults. We go to schools and hang out with them at the schools. I rent sometimes all the what's called tuk-tuks, which are little taxis on motorcycles. We'll go to the airstrip that's there in this village, and we'll literally have them drag race, right? But we end up grabbing a crowd of people watching this stupid drag race, and then our team ends up going out there and talking with people. And what we've realized is, even you going out there and be like, brother, can I pray for you, right? Just becomes sometimes so weird, to where the biggest impacts I think that we've had overseas is just us being with the people, us having
mm,
bonfires, hanging out with these people. And so every single day that we're there is either being spent with kids, being spent with adults, with the church leadership, or we're doing a dinner for all the church leaders and encouraging them, or hanging out with the young adults and really encouraging them, right? So like it's all relational. But the situation would change. For instance, if we were in Haiti and a hurricane absolutely devastated Haiti,
mm,
and we don't know, but like the biggest help that we possibly could do is to possibly go there with a team and help someone rebuild their house. So I used to be super just one-sided about it, but I think that we just have to use our common sense. I mean, if you're in a country where it's a better thing to raise a bunch of money to hire locals in the community to repaint the wall, then that's the best thing to do, right? And so that's kind of how I go about it. Is I've been to South Africa, and there's an amazing guy out there named Fola, and he takes us from school to school to school and serves this community. And for us, him going to school to school to school is the most amazing thing ever for him, and it helps him a lot. But in Guatemala, for instance, us going from school to school to school doesn't really work that way, right? And so when I first started the Forgotten People and my heart was changed, I had this huge map, and I said, everywhere that I go, I want to build a life center, and I want to build churches around the life center. And then the more and more that God started developing me, I started realizing, well, wait a minute, that's probably not the best thing to do. Like, for instance, in a place like South Africa, he may not want a life center. He may need a school, you know what I mean? And building a church building is probably maybe not be the best thing there, right? Like, what if we were to go to India or, anywhere else that process would work? And so my mindset is this: is Americans have the huge mindset of, we're going to go to another country, we are the heroes, look at us coming in, we wear the same shirts, and it has the country on it, and we're coming in, and we have this mindset that we are the heroes. And what I've really done with all of our teams that we've taken is, I've said, man, like, all we are is just a vessel of Jesus. And, you who doesn't even speak Spanish, I know you're going to have a moment in Guatemala where you're possibly just going to hug this teen girl, and you just hugging her as a mom is going to change so much in her that we can't even express. There's one girl that's married to one of my direct leaders in Guatemala. And this girl was known to be just rude. She was shut off. She was super cold. She had watched her dad cheat on her mom every single day of her life as a child. And so this girl was just super. And we brought this one girl who didn't even speak Spanish, and this lady who just had a pure, kind heart, just super pure. And she literally took this other girl who spoke English and Spanish and took that girl into a room. And they were there literally, bro, for like 9 hours, not making it up, like 9 hours.
Crazy.
And came out, and literally this girl had a smile on her face. And we're all like, what the heck just happened? Like, what is this about? And from that day on, bro, this girl has never been the same. She is kind, she is warm, she is loving. And so that's the kind of stuff that we care about more than anything, is just that kind of, relational, aspect of trips that we take.
So you talked about how you would need different approaches in different countries. Have you thought about moving into other countries besides Guatemala?
Yeah, so we absolutely want to. But I have to be careful, because like my thing is I want to go to South Africa. I want to go to so many of these different countries, but I also want to make sure that I've seen in my life. I've literally seen me try to get into things that I wanted to do, and I've seen how unsuccessful it was. Right, when Forgotten People first started, God literally laid out the blueprint and the funding and everything right in my hands. Right, like I didn't really have to do anything other than just do my part in what he was calling me to do. And so, yeah, we are always searching for a place to serve. We feel like, which is a weird season for us, that we have accomplished what we needed to accomplish in Guatemala, which
Hmm.
is super weird. Like, it's a weird season to be in, when you're like, man, we want to build churches, we want to build feeding centers, we want to preach the gospel, we want to see the gospel invading the community. And what's amazing is we're literally seeing that. Like,
Yeah.
churches are there, the gospel has literally invaded the community, and it's amazing to see what's happening. When I drive down the roads of Guatemala, like, kids are like, Kyle, Kyle, hello, Kyle. Like, they know who we are now. And so for us, we're just praying. And we did find, totally by the grace of God, this orphanage in Guatemala that we are starting to partner with, but we're praying about that still. But yeah, anywhere else that we're just really waiting on God to tell us like exactly where we need to go, because we want it to be organic. We want it to be something that is driven from the Lord, for sure.
So what if I have a young person that feels the call of God on their life to do something similar to what you're doing, to go plant churches potentially in another country? What advice would you give them when they're just starting out? Maybe some mistakes that you made, or
Yeah.
something to help them along the way in the beginning.
Yeah. So I would say number one is just go and do it.
Hmm.
You are going to fall. You are going to mess up. Check this out. I didn't even graduate high school. I've never stepped a foot in college. And I had multi-million-dollar corporations handing me checks. I'm going to tell you, if it's the Lord's vision, he will make it happen. We hear that all the time, and becomes cliche, but that's exactly what happened with us. The other thing I would say is really allow it to be a God thing and not like a you thing. Like, a lot of times I'll have a passion for this and I'll try to knock down the doors of trying to get into it, and it never really works. But the moment that it's actually like a God thing and my emotion is tied into it, people around me saw that my emotions were so wrapped around this idea that they really wanted to help me help the people. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so what I would say is, if it's a God thing, it's going to absolutely happen. And I would say just go. Like, just make the plans and go. Fly to the country, fly, do whatever you need to do, but just go. And then what I would also say is get a good but small group of people that you love and you trust to do this with you, right?
Mhm.
And really start doing that. And just even more on the logistics side of how to run the nonprofit. Man, we learned so much about that. But we started realizing like monthly donations were way more important than one-time donations we would raise at the church. And now what we're seeing in the nonprofit world is churches don't give anything anymore
Mm,
because of COVID. COVID has
right.
completely changed the game. And so that's why now we're doing business, right? And we're running a business that ultimately funds the nonprofit. And so what I would say to someone that is young, that is saying like, man, I'm passionate about this and I really want to start this, is to go ahead and take the steps to make it happen. I've seen so many people over prepare and over calculate and overthink really what they want to do, and then they never come down to it and do it. You know what I mean? Francis Chan, I love him to death. One thing I heard that he was saying, one of the things that I love that he said was, so many people pray about their calling. God, what am I called to do? Like, am I supposed to be here or there? And we deal with this so much. I am a firm believer that wherever I go, God has called me to be there. You know what I mean? And if I end up in Iran one day, for some random reason, and my heart is pulled to something, and I believe God has called me there, well, look at that. Now that's where I'm at. But if I'm in Houston, Texas, at a gas station, and there's a moment there, well, then that's where I'm called. You know what I mean? I don't overthink where I'm supposed to be, and I think that's why God has really done a lot in our lives, is because I haven't overthink, that whole process.
So, whenever you started this whole journey, you were a single guy, you had
Mhm.
plenty of time on your hands, much less responsibilities, I'm sure. And now you're a married man, you have a beautiful family. How does running this missions organization coincide with having a successful family life? Does it ever interfere with it? Does it make it better?
Yeah, bro, makes it so much better. So when I go to Guatemala now, I go to Guatemala with my team, with my wife and my baby. You know what I mean? Like, when I prayed to God for a wife, I prayed that I would have someone that it was just as passionate as I was, if not more, about the work that we were doing. And what's amazing is that exact thing happened. And so, whenever I met Haley, she was in the internship at our church. She went to Guatemala. And I think Guatemala for her at that point was just this, oh, it's a mission trip, right? But then, when we ended up getting together and we got married and we ended up going together, I think God really just started molding her heart into what it is. And so what I've done is, in Guatemala, I've always told our team there, we have about 10 team members there in Guatemala who actually do the work, right? I don't really do. I think in the Forgotten People in the past, I've gotten way too much credit for what's happened. When in reality, like, the credit belongs to the people of Guatemala, because their team has done all the work, right? And so that's what we've done, is been able to literally grab our team and encourage them to go and do the work, because I believe that they're going to be far more influential than any American would ever be in Guatemala. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so our job is to encourage them. And so through the years and years that we've had Forgotten People, we've encouraged people in America to donate to the Forgotten People. We send that money over there. And so now what we have is this engine that's pretty much self-sustaining, where people have donated monthly to the Forgotten People. Our business is also giving money to the Forgotten People. And now the Forgotten People in Guatemala is just self-sustaining, to where really there's not much we need to do other than go to Guatemala and just spend time with people, which is just a natural part. Really, now what it is just a natural part of our life. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where I would say is it makes it even better. Like, our little baby loves being in Guatemala, and she's 3 years old, and she's asking me all the time, when are we going to Guatemala? When are we going to Guatemala? Right. So it's an amazing part of our life, for sure.
So you said you have 8 churches in the mountains.
Mhm. 8 churches and a life center. Yes.
So do you have local pastors over those churches?
Mhm. Yeah, we have local pastors. So the main pastor, his name is Pastor Rene. His job is to encourage and teach the pastors that are there in these villages. What's crazy about it is, when you start getting way up into the villages, you get a lot of uneducated people who can't even read the Bible. So the point of the Life Center was for them all to drive down to the Life Center once a month, which is what happens still, And our pastor Rene, he comes in and he teaches the Word of God. He teaches the Bible. He teaches correct theology, right? He makes sure there's a lot of pools that we have to get away from Catholics and just religion in general. So he comes in and he teaches them. And so that's one of the things with the Life Center, is that not only is it a missionary complex, but it also houses, 8 pastors and their wives and their families there, right? And is able to do that. And so yeah, we train all those pastors every single month. They're coming in, and he's giving a lot of he's taught them crazy how to read, right? So he's taught them and then now that he's giving literature out that he's giving to them, that's teaching them as well. And so yeah, it's absolutely amazing what's happening there.
So how did you find these local pastors, or did Pastor Rene find them?
Pastor Rene has been working with people. What he would do is, before he even had a vehicle, he would walk up, 7 hours up to a church, and he would, preach the gospel, and he would find these couple of young guys that were super, passionate about it. And he would then start telling them to come back down with him, and he would basically develop their whole mindset of Jesus, and he would help develop their relationship with God, and he would help develop all of that. And then that's how he started. I mean, literally him. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, if I were to go into Guatemala and do this thing on my own, it would have never worked, right? But us simply going in and finding and connecting arms and linking arms with these leaders was the most incredible thing that we did, which was awesome. So
that's awesome, man. I think it's awesome how you're using local people to spread the gospel in their own country,
right.
and it's really cool that it sounds like you started it and it's kind of taken on a life of its own now, like the gospel
Right.
would, and the local people are telling other local people and people are getting saved. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely incredible for sure.
So listen, man, anybody that heard your story, is inspired, they want to learn more about Forgotten People or you, or even your business, where can they go to find out all this information?
Yeah, so they can find me directly on social media, Kyle Ewald, or if they want to learn more about the nonprofit, they could go to theforgottenpeople.net. And so theforgottenpeople.net is our website. They can connect with us there. And yeah, so it's either me or connecting directly with the nonprofit itself. And so yeah, we'd be more than happy to do anything. We do everything from private trips with just families, to taking churches, to help facilitate someone who believes that they're called to missions to actually go and live on site, right? So we can do literally all of that. We can help and assist with that for sure.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Listen, bro, it's been awesome catching up, man. And I really appreciate your insights on missions. It's great to hear it from somebody who's been doing it for a decade, and
Right.
you're definitely an experienced missionary. I look up to you, man. I think the work that you've done is just amazing.
Yeah.
So that's it, man. I miss you. Come hang out with me.
Bro, I want to. Let's do it soon.